My name is Austin, and I'm a recent graduate of the doctoral program in school psychology at the University of Connecticut. Well, given that school psychology is really focused on supporting students' academic, behavioral, and social-emotional success, the sorts of courses that you're taking are really thinking about all sides of that equation. So if we start and we're asking questions like, what are these students' strengths and challenges, we're going to take courses in things like cognitive assessment, behavioral assessment, academic assessment, courses where we're really answering the question, where is the student at right now, where would we like them to be, where would the student like to be, and how are we going to support them in order to get there. Courses like that, you're learning how to give cognitive assessments, you're learning how to give things like curriculum-based assessment, curriculum-based measurement, where you're giving sort of shorter, more progress monitoring types of assessments to think about, okay, now that I have an intervention in place for this student, what kind of progress is that student making? Which is really grounded in database decision-making, database problem-solving, which is a really core component of modern school psychology. In addition to those more traditional roles that school psychologists have typically played with courses like cognitive assessment. So in addition to really basic courses in assessment, sort of those foundational level courses in assessment, we're also thinking about the other side, where we're thinking about intervention, so behavioral intervention, academic intervention, and social-emotional intervention. So for things like that, that's where you see those courses that really sort of give school psychology, that psychology part. Things like counseling, things like when we were thinking about interventions like cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as traditional academic and behavioral interventions that take a lot from special education and take a lot from school psychology, where we really start to see the blend of those different fields, and we're really thinking about what can we do to support the student's success academically, behaviorally, and social-emotionally. So in addition to those foundational courses, we're thinking about things like ethics, ethics in professional school psychology. What does that look like? What does that mean to be a school psychologist? What are the different codes and ethics codes we have to follow? In addition to that, if you're a doctoral level student, you're really thinking about things like research methods and statistics, which can be a little intimidating for some people. It just depends on your relative level of comfort with research, with statistics. And if you start to hear those words and you start to get a little nervous about it, I definitely recommend that you give it a try, because I came into my program thinking that research wasn't for me, but ended up falling in love with it, falling in love with statistics and research, as dorky as that may sound. So I think that part of the greatest part of those courses in school psychology is that you find those pieces of it, because it's such a diverse field, that really resonate for you, that you really care about. And those are the pieces that you can take and run with and really drive your identity as a school psychologist. And that's pretty exciting. So my favorite part about school psychology is what's often referred to as the paradox of school psychology. So to provide some quick background, as school psychologists, oftentimes we are providing direct services to students. We're providing counseling, for instance, we're sitting down with a student one-on-one, and we're actually talking to that student specifically. But oftentimes, in order to support a student, you really want to talk to the people that see that student the most. It's not us 1 hour a week. It's the general education teacher that's in the classroom. It's the paraprofessional that's assigned to help support that student one-on-one. It's the people that are with that student for many, many more hours a day than we possibly can be. So if we can act as resources to those individuals, to general education teachers, special education teachers, and not just a resource, but actually as a partner, as facilitating consultation, being part of that IEP team, and providing that piece of that pie, that student support pie, and facilitating those meetings and those sit-downs and just those conversations about how we can best support this student, being able to do that in a consultative way, and there's a ton of research around consultation that's just very exciting, and all the different ways that it can be done, and the good things that you can do, the things that are a little less effective. That's my favorite part, is that consultation part, that paradox that in order to support students, we're oftentimes talking to adults more often than not. Especially around my internship, if I think about just the experiences that I had on that, those consultation experiences were the most valuable to me. Those relationships that I made, all those things I learned from those incredible general education teachers, those incredible special education teachers, speech-language pathologists, unbelievable paraprofessionals. There's just so many incredible resources in schools, so often supporting students, that learning from them and building that into your own practice and being able to help share that with others as you talk to other teachers and support other students, that's really, really exciting. And that's what makes school psychology fresh and new and exciting and really fun. So I'm sure most graduate students will probably give a very similar answer to mine in terms of what's most difficult about being a doctoral student. But I have to say that it's time management. I mean, if you think about your graduate career before you go on internship, you're really focusing on three things. You're focusing on coursework, you're focusing on your practicum experiences, and you're focusing on getting research experience. So coursework is incredibly valuable for a couple of reasons. I mean, there's the obvious reason that that's really where you're getting exposed to all the different frameworks, the assessments, the interventions, all the different things that you're really going to be able to take with you as a researcher, as a practitioner, as whatever your career goals eventually are. Coursework is really where you're being exposed to all of those things, and it's very important to give as much as you possibly can to that in order to get the most out of it. Just like anything in graduate school, you're really getting out of it what you're putting into it. So investing the time in your assignments and your readings, especially the readings, is so valuable to your future career. In addition to that, though, beyond being exposed to a lot of things through coursework, you're making relationships with faculty, whether those are your core faculty members or adjuncts that might be professionals, that might be administrators, that might be consultants. Those relationships, being able to meet those people and get to know those people through courses is really valuable. So for that reason, it becomes even more important to really give a lot of what you have to your coursework. But in addition to coursework, your practicum, when you're actually in the schools, implementing those things you're learning in courses, is also unbelievably valuable. And spending as much time as you can in practicum, but really more importantly, giving as much as you can while you're there, soaking in information from your practicum supervisor, the school psychologist, the special educators, the speech-language pathologists, all the people you're interacting with in in practicum. It's an incredibly important place where where the rubber really meets the road, where you're learning how to implement all these things that you're learning through coursework. And as you think back as a professional, those practicum experiences are really informing the way you view your own profession, your profession of school psychology. So I really can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that your practicum experience is one that you're giving a lot to and that you're getting a lot out of because of how much you're giving to it. And finally, you have to balance those two things, giving a lot to coursework, giving a lot to practicum, with giving a lot to research. And oftentimes that means volunteering for research projects, oftentimes in sort of a more menial sort of role to begin with. But as you get those relationships going, as you learn more about the research process, as you come up with your own research ideas and want to contribute in that manner, there's so many different places you can go with research. And if I think about my graduate career, learning how to manage my time in terms of balancing all three of those things so that I knew I was coming out of graduate school with as solid and as well-rounded a base of experience as I possibly could, that's very, very challenging. And I think that there's no one-size-fits-all advice that I can really give to sort of support that idea of time management. But if there is one thing that I think really worked for me, it's making reasonable goals for yourself. If you make your huge to-do list for the weekend, you're thinking about all the things, you've got your personal life, you need to be taking care of yourself and taking care of your significant others and all of those important things. You need to make sure you're doing that as well. But when you're making that to-do list and thinking about, here's the 20 things I need to get done on Saturday and Sunday, how am I going to do it all? You need to make sure that you're making goals that you can actually reach. I think about when I was writing my dissertation, I would write, the first few weeks I was working on it over internship, I just wrote down, work on dissertation. And inevitably, on the end of the weekend, I'd say, I didn't get enough done. I worked on my dissertation, but that wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted to get at least a couple more pages written, and I just never felt like I was getting enough done. Once I finally started breaking it down and saying, okay, my goal today is to write 2 pages of my methods section. Or, in terms of coursework, my goal today is to get half of that assignment done. Or read those 3 articles, and then read those 3 articles, the other 3 articles the next day. Make goals that you can reach. That way you feel like you're accomplishing something. You can see measurable progress towards where you're trying to go. And that's just going to make it so much easier on yourself to feel like you're getting stuff done, to feel like you're actually managing your time well. Because if you just say, finish research project, do dissertation, complete assignment, do all those readings, and start working on that report for practicum, you're not going to get there. You need to be able to chunk those assignments, chunk those activities into different tasks in order to make it manageable. So given that I'm a doctoral student, a recent doctoral graduate, and that I'm pursuing a career in academia, I think my advice would really be targeted towards people that are pursuing a similar path. So if you're thinking about research, if you're thinking about going into a school psychology program and academia is something that interests you, doing research, thinking about those types of issues, my recommendation would be to just get involved as much as you can. Try to see every side of the research process, from developing grants, to writing research proposals, to recruitment, all the way to publication. There's, before you get into grad school, it's almost impossible, I think, to really understand the entire process of research. I went in not knowing anything, not understanding at all how the research process worked, but knowing that I cared about psychology and this was something that I wanted to do. So being able to see those different parts of the research process is going to be such a benefit to you as you think about a career in academia, because you're going to be able to understand all the different parts of the process. You're going to be able to say, okay, I know that recruitment has to look like this. I know that publication, this is the way the publication process usually works. So as you look at careers in academia in the future, you can really understand sort of what goes into that. And as you get involved in publications, as you advocate for yourself to become an author, perhaps even on publications, as you sort of start to build that CV and think about your career as a scholar, as a researcher, you're going to understand a lot, you're going to understand as much as possible about the research process, which is the most important thing, I think, to come out of academia with, a really solid picture of what it actually means to be a researcher. Group design, single subject design, all the different the words that as an undergrad might not mean anything to you yet, but certainly will as you enter grad school. These are things that you're really going to want to know about. So if you're thinking about being a researcher, I would just say get involved as much as you possibly can.